Satam Patak. I am Sarah of Expat in Croatia, and this is 5 Question Friday. Every Friday at 5 o'clock Croatia time, I answer 5 questions from people who have sent them in on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, expatincroatia.com, email, my consulting sessions, and people who slip them into the sole of my shoe. I have 5 fabulous questions for you today. Thank you so much for being here. I so enjoy our time together on Fridays. So before we get started with the questions, of course, I'm going to say some stuff. So first, we've been on holidays for the last 2 weeks. We are back in the office officially on Monday. I feel like I've used my holidays effectively. Yesterday, I went on a big adventure, kind of all around Splits, the outer bits. And I went to Jadro, which is the river where Split gets its water. And we went to actually where like Vodovod is, where the actual like source is, which was pretty neat. And then there's a trail that kind of goes up behind. Like I didn't even know any of this stuff was there. And I love when I find out that stuff is there that I didn't know was there. And then that was pretty awesome. And with EU funds, they built this whole kind of complex around the Jadro River that, again, had no idea it was there. So that was really neat. I'm going to share some pictures of that on stories, so keep a lookout for that. And now Croatia has the euro, which, who else is confused? I'm confused, and it's weird, and I know it's going to take some time to adjust to it. But I gotta say, overall, Croatia did a pretty good job, from what I can tell, of really seamless transition of changing the currency that a country has had for the last 30 years. But it's gone okay. It's just my own complex because it just doesn't make sense to me anymore. But we'll see how it goes. Michael Freer. Hey, Michael. Yeah, you keep speaking in Kuna, so do I. I was just on a coffee and I just kept saying like, oh, this is 1,000 kunas, this is this kunas, this is, and I think I'm going to continue to think in kunas for a long time. You know how when there's a new year, and even though it's a new year, you keep thinking it's the old year until the end of that year, and then that's when it starts to sink in? I have a feeling it's going to be like that with the kuna. Hey, Cancroat, Pebeze, you cannot see past transactions from before 2023. Really? Ooh, that's messed up. I have Ersta, and in Ersta you can see the previous transactions in Kuna. You just have to, they added a tab. So there's a tab for Kuna transactions and there's a tab for Euro transactions. So that's a little messed up that Pebeze didn't prepare for that properly. Oh my goodness. Michael Freer says my salary looks a lot smaller now. Yeah, right? Truth. Okay, looks like we have a question. What is the maximum generations you've seen for an Article 11? Ooh, great question. There are no limitations. So there were limitations before 2020, but when they overhauled the Citizenship Act in 2020, they did away with that. So you can go back as far as many generations as you want, as long as you can connect yourself to that relative using birth records. So we have actually seen people who are trying to use a relative from the 1700s and the 1600s. Actually, someone wants to connect themselves to the first king of Croatia for an Article 11 application, which is interesting. So we'll see if that ends up working out. They're with one of our lawyers right now. But there's no limit on generation, so that's a great question. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get into the questions now. I've got 5 great ones for you. So, this first one came in from Shane. This was on a consulting session that I had. He asked, is an entry visa to Croatia single or multi-entry? This is a great question, and it's not a straightforward answer, but I'm going to explain it as clearly as I can. So first, I have to explain what he means by visa, because it is very common in a lot of countries to refer to visa as the thing that allows you to live in a country. That is not what it is in Croatia. In Croatia, a visa is only for short stays. If you want to live in Croatia longer than 90 days, then you need to apply for a residence permit. So his question is related to visas, just to enter the country. So a lot of countries can enter Croatia visa-free, like Canada, America, Mexico, Europeans can all enter Croatia visa-free. But then there are some nationalities that require a visa to enter Croatia. South Africa is a good example. India is a good example. China is a good example. So they all require an entry visa. Now, Croatia has 3 types of entry visas. So one is the A visa. This is a transit visa. So all this is for is so that you can transit through a Croatia airport. That is single and multi-entry. The second type of visa to enter Croatia is the C visa. This is for tourist, business, or personal stays. Usually they're up to 90 days, but some certain nationalities have different limitations and maybe you can only get it for 30 days. But regardless, it's single and multi-entry. The third type of visa is the D visa. They also call it a long-term visa. What this one is for people who have applied for residence abroad and they need a visa to enter Croatia and claim that residence permit. So if you require a visa to enter Croatia and you apply for the digital nomad permit, for example, online, and you're approved, you need to then apply for the D visa to be able to enter Croatia and claim that residence permit. That is also a multi-entry visa. So all of Croatia's visas for entry are multi-entry. However, there is a caveat that the government says that everyone's situation is different, which is true. Literally everyone's situation is different no matter what it is you're trying to accomplish with the Croatian government. Every situation is different, so of course there may be some specific limitation that they try to impose on you that is outside of what it is that I'm summarizing for you here. So you always have to understand that. But generally speaking, all entry visas are multi-entry. I have to ask you, am I yelling? Because when I was in the shower today, some water just like slipped into my ear and I couldn't get it out, and so I can't hear out of this ear. So I feel like I'm yelling at you, and I'm not trying to yell at you, but if I am yelling, please tell me so that I can dial back my volume, because I really don't know how loud I am right now. Okay, all right. Next, did I miss any questions? Let me just pop up here and see if I have. No, I didn't. Okay, all right, great. Thanks everybody for joining. All right, oh, Michael Freer, are you amused by my clogged ear? All right, second question. This comes from Alexi. This was also in a consulting session. And he asked me, are you a lawyer? No, I am not a lawyer. So every once in a while when I do these consulting sessions, I get someone who gets on the phone and says, how are you qualified to do this? That's a fair question. I mean, I'm surprised that they ask that after they make the payment and they make the scheduling and then they get on the phone with me, but it's a fair question. Why am I qualified to do this? I will explain. I'm not going to go through my entire CV with you, but I'll tell you what my experience is with Croatia. So, I've lived here almost 11 years. It'll be 11 years on May 7th. So I've been here a long time. I have opened 2 companies. I've bought an apartment. I've obtained 5 temporary residence permits. I've obtained permanent residence. And I'm now in the process of applying for Croatian citizenship based on merit, based on expat in Croatia, what I do here. And while I'm not a lawyer, I work with 13 law practices around the country. They help us vet our information. They also help our clients. Whenever we have questions we can't answer, we give them a call. I've been studying the law, Croatian law and bureaucracy for the last almost 10 years now as part of expat in Croatia, so I'm pretty familiar with it. And on a separate note, lawyers can't work for companies. They can't be employed by companies. It's just kind of a limitation. They have to have their own practices, or they can be contractors. So if you actually want to employ a lawyer, you can't employ a lawyer, but you can employ someone who has left law school but hasn't passed the bar, which I thought was really interesting. So yeah, so I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty familiar with all of this stuff. I've been through pretty much most procedures anyone can ever go through, so that's essentially my experience. And I've spoken to thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the last 10 years and seen a lot of different situations. I've seen pretty much everything at this point. So it's a fair question, and I'm always happy to answer that question whenever anybody asks it. All right, we do have another question. My question is the same. If we are a citizen of a third country, are we allowed to cross the border, or we do need additional documents? It depends on what your nationality is. So some nationalities require a visa to enter Croatia, some don't. It all depends on your nationality and your purpose for being in Croatia. So we do have a guide on entry visas. So if you'd like that, send us a DM and we'd be happy to send it to you. And it explains all of the requirements as well as the procedure to enter. Let's see. The social networks speak for themselves. You sound qualified and your content is spot on. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Okay. So, and I also just love doing this. I'm so curious. I know it's like kind of weird to be into the Croatian law and government, but I love it. I'm so fascinated by it. I love figuring out how it works and doesn't work, and all of it just interests me. I'm never bored doing this job. Okay, follow up. If we have Indian nationality, if you have an Indian nationality, you need a visa to enter Croatia. If you have temporary residence in Croatia, then you don't need a visa to enter Croatia because you already have temporary residence. But if you obtain that temporary residence permit abroad, then you will need to obtain a D visa to be able to enter Croatia. Okay. Next question is, it's disappeared on me now. Aisha. This was also a consulting session I had a couple weeks ago before the holidays. If I want to live in Croatia the rest of my life, what are the options? I thought that was a great question. So, the simple answer is work or get married. Now, there's a lot of nuance to this because, as I said a few minutes ago, everyone's situation is different. So, when I speak to someone on a consulting session, or my colleague Terry, or Lucia, or Steve, or Lorena, they speak to people to guide them on their situations. We have to understand what their situation is, what their needs are, and what their goals are. We always try and look at the end game. What is it you're trying to accomplish? Do you want to be in Croatia for a year? Do you want to be here for the rest of your life? Do you want to be here just a couple of years? Do you want to work? Do you not want to work? Like, are you related to anybody? Do you have kids? Like, we have to understand the entire picture so that we can come up with a holistic solution and a recommendation. So there are ways to kind of navigate the system to be able to stay here as long as you possibly can, and that's something that we specialize in, and we have lots of strategies for that. But if we're talking about just in the most simplest of terms, how can you stay in Croatia for the rest of your life? You either marry an EU Croatian citizen or you work. Because if you work for your own company or you work for another company in Croatia, then that will allow you to get residence permits back to back without leaving, and they count towards permanent residence. And you need to have 5 years of continuous temporary residence before you can apply for permanent residence. Once you have permanent residence, you can stay here for as long as you wish. You do not have to apply for citizenship if you don't want to. And many people don't because they have to give up their other nationality. But once you get permanent residence, you never have to apply for residence ever again. You just have to renew your ID. That's what I have right now. So I don't ever have to leave Croatia if I don't want to. If they decide they're not going to give me Croatian nationality, aside from the fact that I will cry in a bathtub, I still don't ever have to leave Croatia even if they say no, which is a giant privilege that I completely appreciate. So that's the simple answer. If you want to understand in your specific situation how you can stay in Croatia forever, contact us. We're happy to help you figure that out. All right, so next question. This comes from Sebastian. This was also on another consulting session. If a person has a regular driver's license that includes a special category for driving a motorcycle, will the motorcycle license be transferred when exchanging the license for a Croatian one? Or will only the standard category get transferred? This was an excellent question, and we did not know the answer to this at the time, and now we do. We went down to MUP. My colleague Lucia went down to Split MUP to ask this question. So all categories that are visible in your current driver's license will be transferred. So just to make sure that this is crystal uber clear, if you wish to exchange a foreign driver's license for a Croatian driver's license, you are allowed to do that. If you have a driver's license from an EGP country, that's predominantly the European Union, then that means that you can exchange it whenever you want as long as it's valid. If you have a license that is issued from outside the European Union, then you have 1 year to exchange it. And they will just straight up exchange it. You don't have to take another driving test or anything like that. So that means that if you have a license that allows you to drive a 16-wheeler or a motorcycle or some other kind of special apparatus in your home country, then Croatia is going to recognize that, and they're going to do a straight one-to-one exchange for Croatia, which I think is pretty cool. Now we do have a few different posts on this. So we have one about driver's license categories. We have one on how to get a driver's license from scratch. We have one on driving school, and we have one on how to exchange your license. So if you want any of those things, send us a DM and we'll be happy to send you those guides. Okay. All right. So I think we're on our last question. Now this one's a biggie. Which is why I saved it for the very end. Okay. So there's a few different parts to this question. So I'm going to go through it slowly and go through it one by one. This came in from Tommy on email. I just read an article on another Croatia site, and it feels contrary to what's been said on your site. I don't know if there's politics involved. Maybe this site doesn't want foreigners buying property. The article contains the following statements. When it comes to purchasing Croatian property as a third country national, you've got more of a task on your hands. You'll need to inform the Ministry of Justice and seek their consent before any property sale can go through. Be prepared to wait. It can take months. So he is quoting 3 points from an article from someone else's site. And I'm going to go through each point one by one. So this is the first point. This is a direct copy and paste from this other site, which will go unnamed. Okay. So if you want to buy property in Croatia, your country of nationality has to have a reciprocity agreement in place with Croatia. That is the only way that you can buy property in Croatia. We have the list of reciprocity agreements. If you would like those, send us a DM and we'll send you the list. If your country does not have an agreement in place, you cannot buy residential property, it cannot buy any property in Croatia. So I want to make sure that that's clear. And if you are from the United States, the reciprocity agreement is with the individual state, not with the federal government. And if you're from Canada, the reciprocity agreement is with the province, not with the Canadian government. There's a couple other countries, including Bosnia and Herzegovina, that is also broken up into districts, but for the most part, it's with the country. Okay, so let's say that your country of nationality does have reciprocity. Awesome. You found a property, you've made the agreement with the seller, the purchase price, you've signed a contract. That contract, along with everything about the sale and you, then has to go to the Ministry of Justice. And the Ministry of Justice reviews the sale, reviews everything about the property, and then they review the reciprocity agreement in place that covers you as an individual. And that can take months. For me, it took 2 months. I've heard that's quick. I've seen it as long as 6 months. So yes, it can take a while. So if European citizens don't apply here. They are buying property as if they are Croatian citizens, so they don't have to go through this process of getting permission from the Ministry of Justice. But if you do have to get permission from the Ministry of Justice, you have to take that amount of time into consideration when buying a property. It is going to extend the sale time. So from beginning to end for me, I made an offer on my apartment in June of 2021, and I took possession November 23rd, 2021. So it took just about 6 months solid from beginning to end. And so yeah, you have to plan for that. So I would say that statement from that site is accurate, but it's missing pieces of information that I think are vital to the story. Second point, once you do own a property, you can't rent it out unless you open a Croatian company and do it through a company. Not completely true in all cases. If you don't have the right to work inherently, then yes, you would have to open up a company if you wanted to rent out the property as accommodation. But if you wanted to rent out that property just to a long-term tenant, you don't need a company for that. It doesn't matter whether or not you have the right to work. So this statement is, I wouldn't call it untrue, but it's missing so much of the picture. Like this is a blanket statement it can't possibly be a blanket statement, because there's two types of renting. There's accommodation renting and there's long-term renting, and both of those have different requirements. And also it's whether or not you have the right to work or don't have the right to work. So this is just not the complete picture. The third point, this is costly and is absolutely not worth the hassle, time, and potential problems you'll likely run into. I disagree 1,000 times. No, I wouldn't say that at all. In fact, Michael Freer, since you're out in the audience and I know you just bought a property this year, do you feel like buying property in Croatia is worth the hassle, time, and potential problems? I think it absolutely is worth it. Croatia is a great investment. It's on the rise. Like the whole reason I am here and I'm able to do this as my job is because Croatia is so popular. And Croatia's real estate market in general is very stable. It hasn't had a lot of fluctuations. Property retains its value here. There's not a lot of turnover. A lot of Croatians, I want to say most, don't have mortgages. So they're sitting on these properties that they're not paying mortgages on. And families just keep acquiring properties, and they just pass it down from person to person, child to child within their family, and they just continue to acquire and to acquire and to acquire. And so we don't have predatory lending either. So all these properties just retain their value. I had my house for a year, and I am certain, I'm pulling this out of my butt entirely, but I'm certain that my property has gone up in value since then, because you can't buy a property for the cost per square meter that I got it for. It was really, really low and unheard of even at the time. Okay, so Michael's responding. Mine was a superstar and made everything easy. It took a while for the final steps, but here I am, happy to have a Croatian home. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. So I would say this is a very discouraging statement. Real estate can be sketchy in Croatia. That's why you have to have a lawyer who's representing your interests. If you go to a real estate agency to find a property, they're most likely going to provide a lawyer, but that lawyer is usually an advocate for the seller, not the buyer. You always need to have your own advocate. If you don't have your own advocate in a sales process, that is how you can get screwed, and then that's how you do end up having hassles or lawsuits or problems. And then, I can see how you can come to the conclusion that it's not worth it, but it is worth it. Croatia is such a great investment. And the reason that you're all here is because that you love Croatia. So if you love Croatia, if you want to be in Croatia and you have the funds to be able to buy a property, why not? Why not do that? I don't see anything wrong with that. So the rest of this person's message, so this wasn't in the article, but he said, this is the first time I've heard that it is absolutely not worth the hassle. Is this the general consensus? It's a very strong statement, and factually true. Seems that it would only apply to third country nationals who want to open a business of any kind. My hopes of starting a business and living in Croatia 75% of the year may be crushed. Yeah, I don't think that you should look at it that way. I think that your dreams should not be crushed. It's a lot more optimistic than this kind of very narrow view presented it. I mean, we always look at things optimistically, but we never sugarcoat things. We never try and make things out to be better than they are. Like, we're very realistic and pragmatic, and we provide you the facts so that you can make a decision on your own. You can take that information and decide what is best for you in your life. But we are optimistic, and I think that optimism comes from our experience, but also comes from just a general love of Croatia. All right, what else you got for me, Michael Freer? And also, if you want to buy a decent place for a decent price, you got to engage people in the neighborhood town to find those gems. I completely agree. Absolutely. Okay, we got a question. Do you need to give up your citizenship in your home country to have residence in Croatia? No, not at all. No. The only time that you would be required to give up your other nationality is if you are trying to become a citizen based on naturalization. And naturalization for citizenship here is when you're not married to a Croatian, you you don't have any Croatian heritage, you've literally just lived in Croatia long enough. That's when you naturalize, and that's when they would require you to give up your other nationality. But there is absolutely no other requirement to give up your nationality for residence or any other path to citizenship. That's a great question. So yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. We are back in the office on Monday, so if you contacted Expat in Croatia over the holidays and you are patiently waiting a response, we will get back to you after we're back in the office next week. I know we're coming back to a huge pile of emails, so we really appreciate your patience on that. If you would like to see your question answered here on 5 Question Friday, drop a comment after I publish this here in a few minutes, or send us a DM. We also have a 5 Question Friday form that you can find in the newsletter. There are a million different ways you can submit a question, and we love weird questions. If you're ever sitting there and you have some kind of completely left field question, you know the perfect place to send that is to Expat in Croatia, because we would absolutely love to answer it. Okay, well, I'm off to eat some delicious Indonesian porridge that I was gifted today and surprised with. I cannot wait to dig into that. I wish you all a beautiful weekend. Thanks for being here. Next week, I believe I'm going to be doing 5 Question Friday from Zadar, so that should be fun. Enjoy your weekend. Vidimo se. Ciao.